All right, Boker Tov. Today's daf is Kuf Samech Bet. We're ahead, so we're picking up on the top of Kuf Samech Bet Amud Bet, and we have said that you are not allowed to have two blank lines between the signatures and the last line of the star, because if you have two blank lines, meaning what we do, number one, is we understand that people are going to not write directly underneath. They're going to give some space, and they're going to write, so whatever Yaakov ben Yitzchak ate here, fine. But then that leaves an opportunity for somebody to sneak in a line here and say something new. So the first principle is Ein Lamedei Mishita Achrona. But then we say, all right, fine. But if there's a space of two blank lines, the star is puzzle, because then somebody can sneak in two lines, and you won't learn from the last line, but you'll learn from the second to last line. So the Gemara now is going to start with that in mind, and let's look at the question in the Gemara. So they raise the following question. Shita umechtzamai. Let's say it's a line and a half. Okay, not two blank lines, but a line and a half. So maybe if you write really small, I can sneak in two lines of text, and therefore it should be puzzle, because somebody can forge it by getting in two lines and have it say something it shouldn't have said. On the other hand, you could say that if you have two lines that are squeezed into a line and a half, it'll be obvious, and we don't have to be afraid that somebody's going to try to do that. So what's the story?
Well, maybe a line and a half is enough to significantly affect the terms.
Right, but the point is, you're not Lamedei Mishita Achrona.
Yeah, but the half line.
So a line and a half. Let me make it clear. A line and a half means that this height is 1.5. Yes. Meaning Tosfos has a possibility that a line and a half meant that that the actual star that the Adam sort of signed here, Adam signed here, and that what you can now do is add like a line and a half like that, right? That's what Tosfos sort of thought suggests maybe it means. But then Tosfos says no. Like in that type of a case, we would just presume that you would not learn from the line above the Adam, the line sort of to get along the Adam. But no, the line and a half. The best way to read it is that means the height. It's the height of a line and a half. So are we afraid that somebody's going to sneak in two small lines? Are we going to say, look, we're not going to be afraid that they'll make it obvious, so we don't have to be afraid somebody's going to do that. Okay. Here he get the Adam Shnei Shitim Pasul, and it's pretty clear from all the evidence that that's what we're talking about, the column height, as they would say, okay, or whatever, the row height, I guess. Anyway, if you have them two lines away from the end of the document, it's invalid. Hashitu Mechsa Kasher, so a line and a half, it's kosher. Ema Seifa, Shita Achas Kasher. If you have it only one line distance, it's kosher. Shita Achas Huda Kasher, Hashita Mechsa Pasul. So great, only one line distance is kosher. A line and a half would be pasul. Classic Gemara. You can't, you don't know what the middle case is, so we cannot infer it one way or the other. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Okay. My Havila, what was the conclusion? Tashma, come in here, the Tanya. Here chikas Adam Shnei Shitim min Aksav Pasul. If it's two lines separate, it's Pasul. Pachos mikan, so this is much better. This doesn't have, a different number. It just says anything less than two, kasher. Okay, so that's our conclusion. Anything less than two is kasher, because then it'll be obvious if somebody tries to get two lines in that they inserted it, and we're not afraid that somebody's going to try to pull the wool over our eyes. Now, here we have a very interesting halacha. Let's say there was 4 or 5 witnesses signed on a star. It was more than the requisite 2. And one of them was invalid, either a relative or a goslin or something. Titkai made us bashar. The rest of the Adam can be good Adam. And why is that relevant for our discussion now? It's a very interesting halacha, which we'll get back to, but why is it relevant for our discussion now? Because of the next line. And some claim this was already the context of the first line. This supports Chizkiya. If you filled the star with the white space with relatives, it's kosher. The Alta Tama, do not be astounded. So that pasuk came from nowhere. Okay, if you have air in a sukkah, 3 tefachim is a problem. But if you fill it with, let's say, metal bars, you've made it kosher until you have 4 tefachim of not kosher schach. So what the heck are we talking about here? Here's what we're talking about. Okay, basically, here we have our star, here we have our Adim, and I was not listening to what the rabbi said, and I basically put my Adim like 3 lines away from the thing. Okay, so what am I going to do? Oh, no problem. What I'll do is I'll just get more Adim to sign above and to fill in the white space, so it's not going to be more than a 2-line gap. But let's say those Adim I get to fill it in are not kosher Adim. Let's say they're puzzle Adim. Okay, so will that be okay? And the logic should be, wait, it was puzzle with the white space. The white space is like the air of the sukkah. It was a puzzle star with that white space. You filled in the puzzle star with something puzzle, with puzzle Adim. Okay, how is filling in that puzzle white space with puzzle Adim going to make it kosher? So the analogy, of course, this is completely just an analogy, is, well, think about a sukkah. Now, what's the story with a sukkah? The story with a sukkah is the following. If you've got a sukkah, let's see if I'll try my 3D drawings, okay? Let's say you've got a sukkah. Let's start like this. It's only got 3 walls, okay? Here's your sukkah. Here's your schach, okay? This is one, you know what? I think a bird's eye view will probably be easier. I'll get to show off my 3D abilities. Okay, it's only got 3 walls in your sukkah, okay? Now, if you have a gap of 3 tfachim of air in your schach, okay, this is schach and this is schach. If this is 3 tfachim, okay, then that means that the schach is not seen as continuous. So you have only a half a sukkah here and a half a sukkah here. This is a gap, okay? It's not a continuous sukkah. But this sukkah only has 2 walls, and this sukkah only has 2 walls. So the sukkah is puzzle, okay? If you had the gap this way, this half would be puzzle, but this half would be kosher, because this half would still have 3 walls. Okay, but that breaks the sukkah into 2. It's no longer a continuous sort of entity, okay? And therefore it's puzzle. But if you went ahead, and instead of having air, what you had here was puzzle schach, because it's actually something, it's not a gap, then it's continuous. And because it's continuous, it's a kosher sukkah. Until you actually were to get 4 tfachim, then it would be defined as like its own section in the middle. Okay, but because it's something, it's not an opening, it creates greater sense of a continuity. And if it's 4 tefachim, well, 4 tefachim is already considered like, like a 4 tefach space is its own space. Okay, so then it's like, then it would be a break. And then you'd have like 3 entities, 1 entity, 2 entities, 3, and then it wouldn't be continuous, it would be puzzle. But 3 tefachim is kosher, only 4 tefachim is puzzle. So if you fill that white space, as it were, with something bad, you've actually made the sukkah more kosher. All right, so the idea here is that if you fill this white space with puzzle Adim, you've actually made it more kosher. Now, again, you could say that that's just like a metaphor and an analogy, like don't be astounded. That's what he says, al tatama. That's absurd. It was puzzle when it was white, and now you're putting something bad in? Yeah, we have that other places. There's no real direct analogy. Obviously, there's completely different logic that dictates in the 2 places. The logic here is, like I said, that if it's air, it creates a greater gap between 2 entities than if it's puzzle schach. Here the logic is that if it's white space, it could be forged. If it's not white space, it can't be forged, even if it's puzzle Adim, right? So there's a good logic that dictates in each case why filling it with something bad makes it better, but it's not the same logic, right? You're not really learning from one to the other. Tosfos, in order to make it, to say that it is saying something of significance, says, don't, like what we're learning from Sukkah is we're not going to make a gzeira. We're not going to say, we won't allow 3 tefachim of bad schach, because it'll come to a case of allowing 3 tefachim of air. So here too, we're not going to say we won't allow puzzle Adim, because it'll come to a case of allowing for a blank space. So making it addressing a rabbinic concern. But anyway, the point, that doesn't seem to be the real Chizkiah's point. Chizkiah's real point more just seems to be, it seems strange that you take something that's blank and you fill it with something bad, and filling it with something bad makes it better rather than worse, but that's the logic. Here it removes a sense of a gap and a discontinuity, and here it prevents the ability from forging the document and from adding puzzle lines. I should say that there's a fascinating tshuva the Rabbi did. I know about this because when my brother and I went to Israel when we were teenagers, in 17 or whatever, and we finally got so we were there in Israel, whatever, we got our tefillin checked, and my brother's tefillin actually had like a word repeated. it was sort of like, it said like on one line, which nantam levanecha, and the next line said levanecha v'dibarta bam. Okay, so anyway, so whatever, he had to get new tefillin, but I was doing some research and I found there's a tshuva, the Ravid, and the Ravid says that if you actually have a doubled word in tefillin, it's not puzzle, and he says the al tatama, and he uses this comparison. If it was white space, it would be kosher. So if you filled it with a different word, it's also going to be kosher. So it's right interesting use of this idea. But anyway, I don't know what the logic is there at all. But okay. Anyway, but this is the ruling. Okay, now, so that's probably with the Chizkiah statement why we quoted the whatever when it starts with saying right here. Where is it? Here, so some read that as an independent statement. Oh, by the way, here's a halacha that if you have multiple signatures and some are puzzle, the shtar is still kasher. But Tosa says it really makes more sense that that's a continuation of the previous line. If it's too many lines separate, it's invalid, but you can fill it with puzzle edim because even if some of the edim are puzzle, it is still going to be kasher. Okay, now, question is, why is it kasher? Whatever happened to the what? Yeah, that's me, I think. I'm sorry. I think my texts are going. Okay, so the question is, why is it kasher? Whatever happened to the ruling that by a puzzle, that normally we say that if you have a group of edim and some of them are puzzle, they're all puzzle, right? It means achnim karvu puzzle, they're all puzzle. So Tosfos basically says that the reason is because even when edim come to a beis din to testify, right? Let's say you have a group of edim that come to beis din to testify. One of them is puzzle. That's only after we said all of you are coming to the beis din to testify. So we say to you, like, well, or you're coming to the beis din to tell us, I don't know what you saw. So we say, like, well, are you coming here to officially register your testimony, right? Are you here to, and only when you are officially there to, to go through, yes, I'm here as a witness, we go through, we swear you in, okay, we don't swear you in, whatever we do, we scare you, we go through a whole process. So that process makes you a witness. And then if all of you become witnesses through that process that you tell us that you're here to testify and we accept you in that process or whatever, then we've got a group of witnesses, one of them are puzzle, we're going to throw it all out. He says, but ironic now, of course, what you and I would think is anybody who's signing a shtar is essentially saying, I'm here to testify. That's an act of testifying, right? And maybe because we say it's Kinisha Nechgare do some beis din, all the more so, you're signing a shtar, it's like your testimony has already been received. But the funny thing is that because there's not like a beis din there accepting your testimony, all there is you and your pen and your shtar, right? We can actually say that we are going to claim, I mean, again, I don't know how we know, but we're going to claim that since you were puzzle, you were not intentionally doing it, right? You did not mean to do it to testify. So why did you do it? Well, maybe you did it to fill up the white space, or maybe you did it. And this is interesting because the Ramah records this practice. The Gemara actually records this practice, but the Ramah records that they actually would do this lemasa. Maybe you did it as just a way of showing, like, as a kavod. They're always looking at weddings for more kibudim, right? So why don't we just let more people sign the shtar, okay? Or you did it, meaning either they gave you a kibud, or the way the Gemara makes it more sound, you were doing it to give kavod to the chassan and kala. If it was, let's say, a ksufa, okay? You wanted to, be part of the activity and sign your name. Of course, it doesn't exactly explain it when it's like it's just like Reuven borrowed $1,000 from Shimon. What's the kavod? But maybe the kavod is, I don't know. You're allowed. Maybe you're doing a kibbutz for me. You're letting me sign a shtar. Means you show that you care about me. I don't know. Okay, but we can imagine somehow that you were doing it for some other reason, and therefore we don't view it as an act of testimony. Now, again, it's bizarre because you would say the signing is implicitly putting your name to something, testifying to something. It could be, ironically, even putting aside the question of what motivated you, it could be ironically that because there's not a formal act of beis din accepting it, because the halacha is signatures on a shtar become like they're accepted in beis din, that it's almost like, by definition, if how should I say this? If this signature would make it a not valid shtar, then somehow it never becomes kimisha nechare dusam beis din. Like it only gets the status of being testimony because it becomes part. It's like circular, like what I'm saying. It's sort of like circular. It only becomes valid as testimony because it's recognized as part of the shtar. But if it can never be if it can never be valid, meaning in the case by a real live based in, it gets accepted as testimony because the court accepted it. Here it gets accepted by testimony because halacha recognizes it as edus, but halacha can't recognize a puzzle edus as edus, so somehow it automatically gets excluded. And a case would be, an interesting test case would be, let's say everybody who signed really intended to testify. They didn't think they were related or something. They only found it afterwards that they were related, and that they really intended to testify. Would you still say it doesn't matter? We're going to still exclude the puzzle testimony? Maybe you would. Maybe the nature of a shtar is that by definition, if it's puzzle, it never became part of the shtar. Okay, so I don't know, but it is a strange halacha that we don't say nimsa echad and cover puzzle. Certainly not in a normal case. Maybe in the case I gave, where everybody very intentionally wanted it, it would. But otherwise, if you just have a puzzle thing, you exclude it. Now, what I don't know is, let's say you have 5 signatures, 2 of them are brothers. Which signature did you exclude? Which brother, right? Is it like one of them is excluded, but not necessarily both? Well, let's say it's 3. You couldn't exclude both. Which one would you have excluded? It could be you don't know. Like it's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We only have one brother's signature, but we never know which one. But like, again, it sort of shows some of the problems here. But it's an amazing halacha, and that allows you to fill it up with eidim and for the shtar to still be kosher. Yes, Doug, you had a question.
Do the eidim have to witness the shtar at the same time, the same place?
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Because that could be different than
right,
testimony about
right. Meaning, let's say they heard me, like I said to you two, be my aidim that I borrowed, $1,000 from Eli. And then I said, to Joe and Yisrael there, be my aidim that I borrowed $1,000 from Eli. Like, could all 4 of you get together and write the same shtar? Probably. So that's a good question. So what's the relevance of that question?
Well, that's maybe a way of looking at that differently than than testimony in general, which is people witness the same event happening at the same time. So when they're put together, that makes
right. Oh, so I see the same. Right, that is true. Part of what defines a kat is where it all. Not only they're coming to based into with the intent to testify, but they're actually having witnessed it with the intent to testify, and that might also create a different type of an organization or of the group. That is definitely a possibility. Now, I want to add 2 things here about. There's a whole long discussion in Tosfos based on other Gemara, which is, what do you think is worse in terms of, if we had to say, Tosfos has a discussion, maybe it's not always true that certain eidim are, we can ignore them. If you had to choose between, if the puzzle eidim were here or the puzzle eidim were here, right? Which ones would you, at the top or the bottom? Which ones do you think would be the easier ones to ignore?
The middle ones.
Well, middle, not top or bottom.
The one on top.
The top. These.
Yeah.
Why is that easier to ignore?
Because you could say that they added it in.
Because maybe they were added in to deal with the white space. Yeah. Okay. There's a reason to say the bottom ones are the easier ones to ignore. First of all, you could always just cut off the shtar here. These are the ones that are more connected to the thing, right? Right. Also, because this was it's another way of saying it, but because this was like the critical zone that it would have been possible to shtar, this sort of determines the kashrus of the shtar, this zone, right? So you could have said the ones on the top are more important, the ones on the bottom are less important. Also, but to support the idea that maybe the ones on the top are less, the based-in's sort of validation, henpeck, whatever, which would sort of say we validated the things, would be on the bottom, would be closer to the bottom witnesses, right? It would be at the bottom of the shtar. So it more seems to be going on these. So anyway, so it's not clear which you would say. Based on our sugya, right, the fact that we had to justify filling in the space is okay with this whole sukkah analogy, it sounds like here would be more of a reason to invalidate, and logically it is closer to the actual document. And even here, puzzle are okay. So if the kosher ones are good here, and the puzzle ones are, and if the kosher ones are here and the puzzle ones are down here, it would certainly be okay. Okay, so that's, I think, what we would naturally conclude from the Gemara. I would naturally conclude it. Okay, Eli's not so certain. Well, Tosfos isn't so certain either. He goes back and forth. The majority of Tosfos assumes Puzzle ate him anywhere, because Chizkiah's statement also, or not Chizkiah, the original statement, Hayu Arbe v'chamisha v'nimsa echad karvu puzzle, doesn't seem to matter where the puzzle one is, right? I mean, heck, let's say you had a case where you had kosher, puzzle, kosher. You didn't even have the two kosher ones together. Could you eliminate it? So the original statement sounds like, yes, just eliminate anyone that's not good. Okay, so that's Tosfos' basic inclination, but at one point Tosfos thinks, based on the Hilchos Gedolos or whatever, he goes back and forth, and he says, no, maybe only if the kosher ones, if the puzzle ones are on top, is it okay? But let me restate it. Maybe only if the kosher ones are on the bottom, it's okay. Okay, but if the kosher ones are on top and the puzzle are on bottom, he says maybe it's no good. So Tosfos goes back and forth on that question. The other question Tosfos goes back and forth on is, if you notice, in the Breita it says, Nimsa Karvo Puzzle. Chizkiah just says, Krovim. What's the difference between a Karov and a puzzle? A Karov is a relative who otherwise would be kosher on a different star. He's just not kosher here because he's related to one of the Yedim or one of the parties. A puzzle is somebody that would be puzzle on any star. Okay, so Tosfos has a whole question about, does he mean only Karov, or does he mean Lav Davka, Karov, but it would include a case of puzzle, and he's not so certain. Okay, now all of this sounds like a nice theoretical discussion, except for the fact that the Ramah in Hilchos Ksuvos says that the practice was on a Ksuva to get a lot of relatives and whatnot to sign the ksuva after the kosher Edom have signed it, because of this principle of, like, it doesn't matter, miluhu krovim, and it was done as a way of giving kibudim of lekavod chasam v'kala. Let me actually see quickly if I can even find the Ramah. Now this is relevant because in our modern, more egalitarian age, I have been asked multiple times from a wide range of different people about, can we have women witnesses sign the ksuva after the men sign it? Which is, very interesting, right? And in terms of Tosfos' question of, does it matter karov or puzzle? So on the one hand, you might say, oh, a woman is puzzle. She's not a karov. On the other hand, interestingly, there's a whole range of poskim that believe that the principle of nimsa echamem karov puzzle doesn't apply to a woman. Because if a man who's a karov is kosher in a different context, and a puzzle is puzzle like a gazan in every context, on the one hand, you could say a woman is not a kosher aid because it's puzzle in every context. On the other hand, most posts can say she's not a puzzle aid, she's not an aid, because at least a man who's a gazlan, right, could do tshuva and then be a kosher aid. So right now he's invalid, but he's in the category. A woman is never in the category, so she's not a puzzle aid, so she doesn't have any impact on the group. Okay, so it's very interesting in terms of that. But this is the question, can we basically, people don't even realize that they're asking this. They don't even know about this Ramah or about this Gemara. But to some level, what they're asking is, can we reinstitute this practice to have, people who are not after the kosher aiding signed, to have the other witnesses signed it as well. So what?
Is there a preference where they signed it?
So what I tell people to do it, I've never done it as a Messiah, but I said, if you're going to do it, what I would say you should do, because I said the following also, this gets to Tosfos' point about why you don't say Echad Mem Karvu Puzzle. So if the reason you don't say Echad Mem Karvu Puzzle is because of the context that they're doing it to sign for kavod and not l'shem edus, I say, in a society in which that would be that phenomenon was known, that people sometimes would sign it just the kavod and not l'shem edus, maybe it's an easier way to assume that context or the possibility of that context, it segregates out that signature. But in a case where that's sort of never done, it's harder for me to sort of see that you could just assume that that's the context of the signature. So what I tell people if they wanted, what?
You're going to say the opposite.
Yeah.
In the context where clearly you're asking women to sign it because you enjoy that, you want their presence.
Right. So you could say in this context, at your wedding. The question is, do you look at how it was signed when it was signed, or do you look at what the star is saying? in the context in which people understand that there are signatures that might not be Eva signatures, it's not making the stars not making the same statement as in a context where people never, don't see it that way. Anyway, so what I just tell people to do is after you have so and so say aid, aid, I tell them write a line like that says something like this: V'gam anu chatamnu mata l'chvod hachatan v'hakala. And then we're also signing in honor of the chassan and the kala, and then just have their thing, and I say don't put the word aid afterwards. Okay, so that's what I tell people who want to do it, but it's actually, let me just see if I can quickly find that Ramah. Okay, and that's actually, but it's actually quite fascinating that that this is actually like Lama'aseh. Okay. See, one more minute. Hold on. Right around here. I'm not finding it. I will get it to you tomorrow. I will find it tomorrow. I'll send you an email. But anyway, it is definitely the record that practice by a lamasa that's what they would do by a ksuva. All right, so let's keep on continuing in the Gemara. So the Gemara says like this. Okay. Now the Gemara says like this. Ibaylahu. So after that fascinating discussion, we get to a little more technical discussion. Ibaylahu. Shnei shitim sha'amru. Hein va'aviran. So after we decided that it was anything less than 2 is okay, we want to know what defines 2 to make it pasul. Does it mean 2 with the space between them or without the space between them? Okay, everybody understand what that means, right? If you've got a 12-point font, right, and this is sort of the size of your lettering here, whatever, and so this is a line, right? So your other line would be here, right? That's where you would have sort of the writing, and then there'd be a little gap you'd have. So when we say if it's 2 lines apart, presume, so that makes it possible because then somebody could fill in those 2 lines, right? So presumably it would mean 2 lines plus the normal intervening space. Or do we say no? Maybe if it's exactly 2 lines, it's okay because somebody will write them without a space between them, or will write them a little smaller. Or do we say no? If somebody's going to do that, it will be obvious that they squeezed it in, and therefore it'll be clear that it was done after the fact. Okay, so that's the question. Now that we said it's anything less than 2 lines is okay because it'll be obvious it was squeezed in later, what if it's exactly 2 lines and it doesn't include the intervening space? All right. No, makes sense that only when it's them with their intervening space. So what would it be good without the space afterwards? Meaning it's not the normal way of writing. It must be only with the intervening space. Then it will look completely natural if somebody tries to squeeze something in. Rav Shavtai Amar Mishmei Techizkiya Shnei Shitim Shamu B'Ksav Yad Edim V'Lo Ksav Yad Yidei Sofer. Let's say when you are a professional, so your size of your lettering is a certain size and so on. And whereas if you're a non-professional, you're writing more script, and again, it doesn't mean whose handwriting it is, but it means like what size of the lettering. Okay, so it says, since our concern here is that you're going to squeeze in your own lines, and presumably it sounds like your script writing is bigger, right? You understand that, like if a sofer is trained, they're able to control their hands more and get the stuff to be a more uniform and smaller size, whereas a normal script would not be that way. So these two lines are only going to be a problem if they're the height of your normal of a normal person's script, which is a bigger size. If they're the height of only a sofer script, it's not, because the only way you're going to get a sofer script in there is by having a sofer add something after it's been signed. And a sofer is not going to agree to add something after it's been signed. Of course, you could say, I don't get it. You have a whole chart by a sofer, and then you have something, in somebody else's handwriting, and those last two lines isn't that an indication that it was forged. But, not necessarily. Sometimes you could have the sofer write something, and before we got the witnesses to sign it, we realized, hey, wait, we had a discussion and we wanted to make an emendation, and we wrote it in before we got. So it's possible that happened without it being a forgery. Okay, so that in itself, the fact that it is just a normal person's script doesn't prove it's a forgery, but we're only concerned that that's what you're going to do. You're not going to get a sofer to put in those lines after it's been signed. Okay, so he says, Shnei Shitim Shamu B'Ksav Yidei Edim V'Lo Ksav Yidei Sofer. My time, why? To call him a Zayif, Lav L'Gabi Safer Adam Zayif. If you're going to forge it, meaning you're going to add lines after it's been signed, you're not going to get the sofer to go ahead and do it. You're going to do it yourself. The comma. Now, how much is actually these two lines? I mean, we're going back and visiting this idea of the space between them with a little bit more precision. So Amar Rav Yitzchak ben Eliezer Kigon Lech Lecha. You could say Lech Lecha, but whatever. Lecha Lecha Ze al Gabe Ze. One on top of the other. Because if you think about the two words Lecha, right? So the Lamed goes up, and if this is your normal height of a line, the Lamed actually demands an extra space, right? Because of the way Hebrew is written, right? And the Chaf actually demands an extra space down there. So when we say two lines, he's saying it means actually two lines with the extra spaces for the raised letters and for the lower letters. Okay, so this is one line, and this is one avir, and this is one avir. Okay, the airspace below the line to get that. And if we have to allow the chalacha to be, maybe what I need to do here is to. What? So if there's a word on one line, it says, I'm giving lecha this and this and this and this, and then I'm giving lecha this. So if down here, I've got to get to the worst case scenario is I would have my word lecha, my second lecha here, right, appear here, right, which creates, right, that possibility, right? So, okay, so that's one line. Here's one line. Okay, here's another avir. And plus, right, now I've got, because the Adam are going to be signing here, right? Where the Adam signing? Right, the point is, how much space, here's the document above, how much space do I have to leave so somebody could put in two lines and it could look natural? That's the question, right? So what it's saying is that for somebody to be able to put in two lines and it look natural, you would need to be able to write lecha lecha here, which would be what would that be? That would be 2 lines and 4 avirs. Okay, anything less than that, it's not enough space. So before we said 2 lines and 1 avir between them, but now we're realizing actually for it to fully look natural to stick in 2 lines, you would need 2 lines and 4 avirs. Okay.
And share the avir in the middle.
Yeah. So the point is, what you really could do is you could actually just be careful the way you write. And if it happened like this, a good sofer will just go like that.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So Tosfos has that discussion that maybe we don't need 2 avirs here. The other thing, right? So Tosfos has that discussion, but this is the way the Rashbam reads it. Okay. So. 2 lines and 4 avirs. You don't have to assume they're constantly banging into one another. You don't have to assume that they're constantly, the height here is going to hit into there. Basically, you have to allow for the lamed above and the chaf below, and just 1 normal space here between them. Okay, because presumably there's reason that you could always just, adjust it. Okay. Baruch ben Levi b'shita achas, which is Baruch has a chaf and Levi has a lamed. Okay, Kasavar Shita Achas for Shnei Avirim, which is very strange because that seems to argue on a position before about 2 lines. So it says, okay, he disagrees. He says only 1 line. All right, so now we have different variations though of what this 2-line measure is. Amarav Lo Shanu Ela Bein Edim L'Ksav Avol Bein Edim L'Ashrasa Afilu Tuvanami Kasher. So this is the Ashrasa. This is the Kiyum Hashtar. So if basically I've got my Eidim up here right after without any white space after it, okay? And then I got a lot of white space before the basin, where the basin would affix their Kiyum Hashtar, that's okay, all right? That's not a problem, because now the question is well, why? Maybe somebody will come ahead and write, oh, by the way, after they signed it, we, somebody's going to insert in here, we, the Beit Din, saw that Ruvain paid half the debt, okay? And you stick that right before the basin's kiyum. Now, of course, you could say that the basin's kiyum only means to validate the witnesses. It should never be interpreted to be validating anything else. The shtar ends here, but that maybe is, well, let's see what the Gemara says, because the Gemara is not going to say we don't have to worry about a white space, okay? Even a lot of space. So the Gemara says, why is there a problem between Eidim and the document? Because you'll forge and write something in the white space. So and you'll have the signatures of the witnesses going on it. If you leave a white space between the Eidim and the Kiyum, you'll write, fill in what you want. And the witnesses, the basin signatures, will be essentially validating that. Okay, so how does that work? So the Gemara says, no, because what you do is you sort of messy it up. Meaning what you do is that after they did this, what basin would do is they would just put marks here, just like marks like that, no signatures, whatever, or no text. So that marks would basically make that space unusable, would signal, so, and presumably if somebody, would scrape that away and write something, it would be obvious it had been erased. So that makes this space unusable, so we're not afraid that it'll be filled in with anything. So do the same up here. Just do that and make it a kosher shtar.
Also, why not just validate it?
Up above. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're just the way you would do. I don't know if you've ever, if you ever sort of see a notary public. But that's I think because of their machine only goes at the bottom. Right? I don't know why they wouldn't do it higher. I can't explain that. Okay. So the Gemara says, so why don't you just sort of smudge that area? And that'll solve that problem too. Amrino, so no, because people will say that the witnesses are signing Meaning people will say, oh, so if you got this smudge stuff here, the signatures aren't going on the star above that says Ruben owes $100. They're signing on I don't know, they're going, you did some nice design, like imagine somebody also does, some curly cues or whatever, whatever they do, something like that, they do some nice design and they say, yeah, this is part of this, witnesses are signing how much they like the design. Which is a strange idea. What does it mean to sign something that isn't words? But once there's something else, that essentially what it's saying is that it means that the signatures, witnesses are not relating to the star above. If that's true, says the Gemara is saying here, say the Beis Din's Kiyum isn't relating to the star above. So the Gemara says, Bein Edim Lashras and Nami. So if you put this design or the smudges between the witnesses and the Kiyum, Ami people say Beidina Tiyutahu de Chasimi. They're just signing their signatures on the design and not on the Edim. So the says, no, Beidina Tiyuta lo Chasimi. Nobody's going to think that it's understood that a Kiyum only relates to signatures. So I mean, it's bizarre. And signatures relate to a design. They don't relate to a star. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, why don't we just say that? So whatever it is, I have no answer. There's a lot of questions here. Why don't they sign it higher? Why don't we say the Kiyum only refers to Eidim? And even if there was words written here, would it relate to it? I don't know the answer to any of that. But the basic point is we do not allow white space here. It either has to be Ksav or it has to fill in with Eidim. Like we said before, you can fill it in with Eidim, but you can't fill it in with smudges or designs. Here you can make a distance if you fill it in with some type of a smudges. Okay? And we will, we'll pick up with this tomorrow, and I will try to have for you that Ramah tomorrow that says that that's what they would do by Ksufa. All right, look at this. We're ahead and we're finished.